It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back as we turn to health matters. Now, I can speak from experience as parents. We obviously want our children to be happy and, most importantly, healthy. So it's obviously a concern if you see that your child isn't feeling great. But it's often difficult to tell exactly what is wrong with a child, especially with infants, and especially if it's your first child. It can leave you as a parent unsure on what to do, feeling insecure. You just want to help them. And joining us in studio today is a pediatrician and allergist and good friend on the show, Professor Claudia Gray, to give us some tips on infant ailments and what signs to look out for, and then, of course, how to treat them. Prof, in the flesh. It is so good to see you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's good to be here, bright and early.
Bright and early, and helping a lot of parents because the nasties have crept into my house and my two kids just it goes from creche to one to the other. But when it comes to our infants, it's this weird line that you walk, and I joke about your first child because obviously your heightened anxieties play a role there as well. But it's either, oh, it's nothing, or it's let's go to hospital. There seems to be very little middle ground. When it comes to our infants, what are the most common ailments that we experience? What comes through your doors?
Sure. Well, this is obviously a very wide variety. But I think we can categorize it as non-infectious and infectious. So first of all, just to talk about the non-infectious, obviously some of the ailments will be eczema or teething or bites or burns or scalds or bruises.
Like a persistent rash.
Yes. So those are more the injuries and the things that aren't spread from one person to the other. And then what you're talking about, for example, our creche syndromes, etc., is infectious diseases. So things that we transmit from one person to the other, and we've all got to know that very well in this COVID-19 pandemic. And infectious diseases in children can affect every organ in the body, but most commonly the tummy, so tummy bugs, and the respiratory system. And of course, the respiratory system is a big system.
Quite vast,
it goes from nose all the way down to the bottom of the chest. So we often divide it into upper respiratory. So often you'll hear your doctor say, oh, your child's got an upper respiratory infection. So basically that means everything from the trachea upwards. So a common cold, sinusitis, ear infection.
A lot of snot.
Tonsillitis, lots of snot, even croup where they and barking, cough.
Worst,
and then you get your lower respiratory system where we often worry a bit more. So your bronchi and bronchitis or bronchiolitis where you get the wheezy children. And if it's in your lung tissue, a pneumonia.
Okay,
some infections are quite non-specific. So for the first 2 or 3 days, there's just a fever and you can't find anything else. And often we get very worried about those. And only on day 3 or 4 or 5, it manifests in something like hand, foot and mouth disease with a rash, or roseola, where they come in a rose-like rash. And that only occurs down the line after a few days of fever and worry.
I think we assume that your job is just easy. You identify, you see snot, you go, oh, no, that's that. But this is obviously why you have to study for 25 years to get to the point that you're at.
Absolutely.
So many different root causes to get a child to the same place of misery, of feeling awful. And often I think many of these ailments, especially when it comes to the snotties and that side of the spectrum, they kind of feel just really horrible. How then do we treat that? Or what is the first step that we as parents, provided, of course, we haven't got any of those alarm bells of a really high temperature and needing to get them to a doctor, how can we treat our children? Can we use paracetamol?
You've made a very good point. So first of all, try and identify how sick is my child. If there are those alarm bells, like high breathing rate or pouring out diarrhea, not drinking enough, covered in rash, obviously you'll take them immediately.
Get there.
But if they're niggly, have a fever, seem to be uncomfortable, that fluey ache, bit of a headache, then our basic painkillers like paracetamol are a very, very good place to start. Something like paracetamol is affordable, available, and generally very safe if you use it in the recommended doses.
And what is that recommended dose?
Well, that's quite a complicated formula. So if you want to know exactly, it's 15 milligrams per kilogram per dose. And I say this now because a lot of parents like to work it out exactly. And it works out to about, not in the infant Panado or paracetamol, but in the bottles of paracetamol, it works out to 0.6 mils per kilo per per dose.
Per dose,
So
okay.
it's actually 0.625, but for simplicity, it's 0.6. So if you have an 8-kilogram child, times 0.6 is 4.8, so about 5 mils.
Oh, parents
If
are
you
going to
have a
love working this out today.
4, I know, but essentially 8 kilograms is 5 mils, 4 kilograms is 2.5 mils, 16 kilograms is 10 mils. You can also follow the instructions on the bottle, but when patients come to me, you know, a 2-year-old child may weigh 15 kilos or 9 kilos. So there's
exactly
a huge weight variety.
It's a sliding
the most
scale, yeah.
accurate is to actually work it out on weight.
Just very quickly,
Yeah.
temperature, what's that red line in terms of when you need to get worried?
Well, I think that's a hard question because a child can be extremely ill with pussy sinuses and ears and have a low-grade
Low
temperature. So it depends on the combination of the temperature and what the child looks like. But certainly in the youngsters under 6 months, we take it a little bit more seriously at an earlier stage. So 38 or more, I'd already act in the younger child.
Okay.
In terms of discomfort, in my book, anything over 37.5, you start feeling achy and uncomfortable, so you can start treating. But when you worry, is the younger child 38 or more, the 6-month or older, maybe 39 degrees or more, 40 degrees or more, you know, kids are at risk of complications such as febrile seizures, where the high temperature or the rapidly rising temperature can actually trigger a fit.
Tip
But
the
it's
body.
always that combination of the fever and what the child looks like. And any fever, I'd say in my book, over 5 days, you'd better off having
Just
it checked
have
out
a chat.
just in case it's a secondary infection.
Just think of how you feel when you've got the flu, and you can relate. I think little people, they really do feel it. Prof, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to connect with you. So good to see you here in person. And of course, to all of our parents out there, I know it can be a very anxious period when your child is sick, but just you know them better than anyone else. So look for those signs. And remember to contact your doctor if you're unsure about anything or have any questions about the health of your child.
Introducing new Panado Pediatric Syrup 5ml sachets. They're really convenient to pack and easy to use, so you're always prepared for pain and fever anytime, anywhere.